The Currently podcast is produced and recorded at Born in June Creative Studios in Los Angeles. Born in June Creative helps movers and shakers tell their stories. Welcome to the Currently podcast. I'm your host, Pt.1. We're here for a deep dive into current events, culture shifts, personal development, and social good, in conversation with me and interesting people from all walks of life. This show was created to make us think a little bit more about life's biggest questions, the world we want to create, and what this moment in time means for our generation. Let's leave the small talk behind and make sense of the now together.
Today I present
Let's get started.
A very special two-part episode of the Currently podcast. I have on the show Denise Soler Cox. Denise is the founder of Project Enye, and she has dedicated the last few years of her life to traveling around the country, speaking to first-generation Americans, Enyes as she refers to them, all 16 million of us who are living in the country. And who are Enyes? Enyes are the American-born children of immigrants. She also has spoken at LinkedIn, Facebook, and major organizations, universities, and religious nonprofit centers all over the country about how we can bridge cultural divides among first-generation American, second and third-generation American, and how we can all embrace the immigrant heritage that makes this country beautiful. It's such an emotional conversation because we dive deep into our childhood experiences of feeling alienated, feeling left out, of feeling like we didn't fit in with our American culture, and also feeling like we didn't quite fit in with our Latino relatives, maybe back in our parents' country of origin. Super emotional. Grab the tissues. I love Denise. Denise is a personal friend and mentor of mine, someone who has really supported me along the way in my career. Denise and I actually met through Be Visible Latinx, which is a career platform for multicultural millennials, which I encourage you all to join, after I wrote a piece for Marie Claire about my parents' immigrant story and my experiences being an ambi-cultural American. Me Too has also called this a 200% because we are 100% American and 100% Latino as well. I hope you enjoy it. I think a lot of you who are multicultural or Latinx will definitely relate. And I'm excited to present part 2 next week, where we dive a little bit further into how Denise is actually creating tools now to help people navigate the intricacies of being ambicultural. All right, let's get to the show. Thank you.
There's a woman at LinkedIn. She says it all the time. And so she says diversity is like when everybody, like if you were to go to a dance floor and then you would see lots of people of different colors. And then inclusion is when someone invites you to dance. And then belonging is knowing that that is your place. Like you're not an outsider there. Like you're not like someone who's on the outside looking in like, wow, all these people are having fun and I'm not, or all these people are in this group and I'm not. Like belonging is like, this is your tribe. These are your people. And that's like the goal, the epitome of, like that's the goal. And so when we did this amazing screening at LinkedIn, so I've done now over the last 18 months, I've done over 70 live events all over the country. And there have been like an inordinate amount of them in the San Francisco Bay Area. Right. And so like there was this really awesome event that happened at LinkedIn, and it was so neat because I saw what they were trying to do was invite a bunch of people. So it wasn't just like LinkedIn employees. It wasn't just for their group. It was for anyone in the Bay Area that wanted to come. And then they had drinks, they had food, and then they had, a screening of the film and me doing a Q&A, but then other members of leadership from LinkedIn doing kind of like a fireside chat. And it ended up like creating such an awesome, intimate environment. And like that event went on, and it was awesome. Like we literally, like the people at LinkedIn that were cleaning up rooms were like, you guys got to get out of here. And then we went downstairs to keep talking, and the lobby was filled with people wanting to still talk to each other and wanting to give testimonials. And I realized that night it was very special to us and to me, but also it was special to be Latino in the Bay Area in tech, knowing that they're like events that bring community together, because that like Latinos value community. Like you have to be an idiot not to know that, right?
Yeah.
And so for some of these people, they don't realize like if you can get us together and get us eating, drinking, and talking about something that we're passionate about, then we feel like we have a place versus like, translating something into Spanish, which like, believe it or not, people are still saying, oh, Denise, this is translated into Spanish. You can send it to your people. And I'm like, you are so missing the point here. You know, it's like so much more complicated, and it's cool to kind of be a part of this wave of activities, I guess, and in some way, shape, or form, we're kind of making a dent and letting people know that they belong, you know, in our project, and by extension at the places that choose to bring us in, you know?
Yeah. And I one of the things I love about Project Enye and everything that you've been doing, and I know it started with the film and now it's evolved into you really being a very prominent speaker on the Enye experience, and not just speaking to other Enyes, but really speaking to some of these larger stakeholders. And I think what I love is that it's not us being told, oh, this is what diversity is. Because I've been in rooms where people are telling the people of color or the Enyes or the Latinx people, they're telling us about our community, like, you guys like this, and like, you know, the data shows this, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's great that you guys have stats and data, but not very often are we actually asked to share our experience, and not very often do we really feel like we are being heard in those spaces. And I think what your project has done, and this kind of evolution of you speaking directly into these spaces at LinkedIn. I know you've spoken at Facebook and a lot of these companies that are really having a big impact in society through social media and a lot of these really innovative projects. And you're kind of on the front lines telling them, well, this is who we are. This is this experience. And let's bring in all the people in your organization, and you can hear the diversity and range of experiences that is being an Enye.
Right.
And I love that you've created that space for everybody, and that I'm just so in awe of you and everything that you've done and everything that you've accomplished these past few years. So tell me how Project Enye got started.
Yeah. First, before we get into that, I just have to say first, thank you so much. And also that I feel like I definitely hustle, and there isn't a weekend that has passed in the last, I would say, like 4 or 5 years that I haven't worked. So I definitely have put in the work. And I think that it's time, like timing is such an important thing. And there have been some things that I've done and have totally crashed and burned because it just wasn't the right time, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of feel like it's the right time now, and people are kind of hungry to understand themselves and like have like a cultural self-awareness. So they're kind of hungry for the conversation, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
They don't, they're hungry for it. And so I just feel like we, created this amazing thing, and that people are hungry for. And it's just like a pleasure and an honor to be asked to do it just so many times over and over. I literally just booked a screening and a speaking engagement for November of this year, because people are like clamoring, honestly, for this conversation, and like a complete dream come true. And it's a result of going for something, which is a great segue into your question. So like, how did this all start? For the people who haven't seen the film, which is probably most of the people that are listening, it really started with an idea. It started out when I was 26 years old with a group of my friends on Miami Beach. We were all having drinks and just kind of having a good time. There wasn't like an occasion. We were just out kind of enjoying each other and talking back and forth, joking, laughing. And all of a sudden I had this like aha moment. And I think everyone can relate to like aha moments where it's kind of like a song where you're like, that you've heard a million times. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I actually understand the words to this song, or you're like, oh my God, I've heard this a million times and it finally makes sense. So as I was sitting there with my friends, I realized, wow, I am not alone. And really up until that point, I literally believed that I was the only person that I knew that ever experienced a sense of loneliness and like not enoughness and outside looking in. It's like when it came to my culture, I never felt quite Puerto Rican enough for my Puerto Rican family and friends. And I never felt quite American enough for the mainstream society that I grew up in the suburbs of Manhattan. And because of that, I had a lot of shame, and I experienced, I would say, a lot of challenges to my own self-esteem, because I just didn't understand where my place was. And that was super, super challenging for me, and definitely not anything I ever wanted to admit to anyone. Right. And so when I was 26 years old, I realized that all those years of feeling alone and disconnected, I was actually wrong. And that all my friends around that table felt the same way. And they were expressing it because they were sharing funny things and sad things and all kinds of other things. And I realized, oh my God, I've been wrong. I'm wrong that I don't feel like I belong. I actually do belong. Like, this is nuts. Like, I felt like I had struck like social gold. I felt like I needed to shout it from the rooftops because I knew that I couldn't possibly be the only person that felt like that. And so I convinced myself that I was going to make a documentary, even though I never had done that before. I had no experience, no training, didn't even know anyone. I drove home, and by the time I got home that night, I convinced myself that I wasn't Latina enough to make this movie, and let alone anything else enough to make it. And so I kind of packed it away and would take it out and pack it away over and over and over again for 17 years, until one day I just decided I'm enough to make a phone call to pitch this to a documentary filmmaker just to get his feedback. And that phone call and that pitch meeting led to all of this insanity that's happening now. So it's like pretty extraordinary that it was like it's like that film I always say, like We Bought a Zoo. Mm-hmm. And like, I literally was like, okay, I have 13 seconds. I can at least have 13 seconds of courage right now. My goodness, And so when I called, I got an appointment. And I mean, the story of how this kind of unfolded is just the wackiest, craziest story. I think it's also something to look at and say, wow, like if she can do it, I can do it, because I am the most normal, average person that you'll ever meet.
Well, you're really not, but okay. I see what you mean. I think what makes you even more special, I mean, everyone's special, but I think is that when we can channel these gifts that we were born with, you are obviously an amazing public speaker. And, I think everyone who meets you senses, the warmth of your smile. You just feel like, oh, there's my long lost friend I haven't seen. And your empathy, I think, makes it so that you create a space that people want to share and can be vulnerable. And I think you being able to channel your vulnerability and utilize this experience has been incredibly helpful to others. So I think the message there is everybody, if you can find your gift and channel it in something that you're passionate about, I do think magical things can happen. And thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that, you've had hits and misses, and that it took you 17 years from the idea to actually doing it. So what do you think changed in those 17 years that one day you were finally like, okay, it's now?
Here's what's so nuts, Betsy, is like it was the tiniest little thing, because it was really 17 years of just doubt, like pure unadulterated doubt. And like just listening to that darn voice, like you're not good enough. You can't do this. Like you need to have more money in your bank account. You need to XYZ, like you need to be skinnier, like crazy stuff that like doesn't make any sense. But like I listened to that. I believed those crazy thoughts that I was having. And it was just, so for me on January 1st, I consider it like a very auspicious day. Anyone who's friends with me, like you and Josh, would be at my house on January 1st with your family, celebrating with us, because I always have people that I love, people I think are awesome, over for a really awesome brunch that starts at like 11 and it usually ends at like 5.
Wow.
And there's singing and there's laughing and there's stories and there's food for days and people take home food. And it's just such a great time to like bring the new year in. And what everybody does is, we call forth the year, and like everybody sets an intention and we all say it together. I mean, everybody gets a chance to kind of say what their intention is for the year. And it's a really magical, magical day. And the reason why I do it is because I just have always seen that day as like everybody gets a second chance, right? Like second chances are so real, and everybody deserves a second chance. And so I love January 1st because it's a day that represents that for me. So anyway, I don't know how many years ago now, let's say, I think it was 6 years ago, I was sitting at my dining room table as the food was cooking, and my friends were going to be here in probably an hour or two. And I was writing out my goals for the year and just, creating my intentions and deciding what I wanted to get done by in 1 year. And I wrote down that goal, make Enye, make the movie. Like I was about to write it down for the 17th time. And all of a sudden I felt like I was so full of crap. Like I was so full of it. Like I'm totally lying to myself. This is so not going to happen. If I really was honest with myself, I would never have the life that I really, really wanted, because I was so convinced that this thing that I had been thinking about and talking about for years and years was just not mine to have. It's very upsetting even to think about that I actually indulged this for so long. It's sad. That morning, though, I said, no way. No, it is something for me. I am deciding that this is mine, even though I have no idea how I'm going to do it. Because I think a lot of times what people do is we don't think that we can have something unless we know how we can get it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sitting under a lamp right now and the lights are on, and I don't understand electricity, like the inner workings of electricity, but I still enjoy like seeing light. Like my loft has light, and I don't understand electricity, but I get to enjoy it. And I know that that's a simple kind of explanation. But in the same way, like I didn't believe that I could have this thing, right? Because I didn't understand how to get it. So in that moment, I said, I don't care if I don't know how, I'm still going to go for it. I'm going to give it everything I have. And I gave myself a year. And I said, if I don't accomplish much this year, then I never get to write this down again. And for me, that was like death by slow torture. Like I would just die if I couldn't talk about this one thing I was going to do one day when all the planets aligned. And so I like started making a list, and I literally only could write one thing on my list. And that one thing was call this girl that I had met the year before who told me that her next door neighbor made documentaries. I had nothing else. I had no other ideas. And I called that girl. I got his number, that I made an appointment, and the rest is history. It is just absolutely bananas. And, you know, it has been the biggest roller coaster, professional and personal roller coaster of my entire life. But what I've realized from it is that it's a moment. It's like one decisive moment that from now on, I will not believe the lies that I'm telling myself. And I'll believe the truth that if I have something in my heart that I want to do or that I want for my life, that I deserve that thing, because everyone deserves that thing. It's not just me that deserves it. That's why I'm just like everybody else. We all deserve what we truly want out of our life.
And so what happened after that meeting?
What happened after that meeting was, you know, it was a short, about 20 or 40 minute meeting. And I remember when we were walking down the stairs, he said, Denise, how serious are you, about making this? Because this is like a multiple year thing. It usually takes about 2 years to make a documentary. We have to raise money. And they listed off just like all the hard things. And I think he was doing it on purpose to kind of deter me. And I remember telling him, Henry, you don't know me, and that's totally fine, but I've made a decision. And so I don't care if this takes the rest of my life, I will do it. So I'm 100% committed. And here's what happened. Really not much of anything. So that was January. And I didn't get my first interview until November. So he and I were in touch, but he had started a whole nother film. And so I was like, oh, great. So like, he kind of wants to mentor me, but he's starting a whole nother film. So a whole 2-year process. And so how do I keep this alive? So we kind of met every once in a while, this and that. And then I ended up landing through another crazy set of crazy circumstances. My first interview with Edward James Olmos.
Wow.
And that was November. So I pitched it to him in January, and then got the interview in November. And so, this is, my partner's an Oscar nominee. He gets pitched ideas all the time. And so there's got to be a way that he kind of vets them. And so he mostly doesn't take people seriously because, doing something like this is a really big job. And if you see the film, what you learn is all the, personal and financial sacrifices that I went, and which were totally worth it, but, that I went through to actually make this film. It wasn't until I got that interview that he realized how serious I was, because I could say, listen, I'm serious as a heart attack. But then there's, hey, let me show you how I'm serious as a heart attack. I have Edward James Olmos on the line, and I need you to help me with this one email. And he's like, wait, what? And we got the interview, and then I think he realized, okay, she's serious and she's going to do the work. But then still, he was still working on this other film. So 2 years passed until he and I really got to work on this project. But we just kept working together. He hired me actually to help him with marketing and distribution for his last film. So I had a chance to learn about what it's like to market and distribute an independent film, which was a really amazing experience.
Wow.
And when we were done with that, like I was like, I don't care like what I need to do, how hard I need to work. I'm all in. Like whatever you need, I'll do it. And so we just worked together. And it also gave me a chance to work with him and to see what kind of person he was and to understand like, what does it look like to produce a film? What does it look like? Like there's so many people involved. There's so much happening. It's like one humongous orchestra. There's just a lot of relationships and a lot of money and just, a lot of people and things involved. And so for someone with ADD, it's awesome. And you also have to be able to manage your kind of stress levels. It's kind of a crazy thing. And so I realized I really enjoyed working with him. And so by the time we got started with Enye, I was like, rock and roll, let's do this. And then we got started. And then just a host of miracles and amazingness just kind of started, going towards us. And it really just hasn't stopped since then.
And so what were you doing professionally before you made this choice that you were going to dedicate yourself to the making of the film and then learning more about what goes on in the filmmaking process? Yeah.
You want to hear something so funny, Betsy? No one ever asked me that. You're like the first person who has asked me that question.
Because sometimes it can seem like, I think sometimes we hear stories from people who pursued a dream and we say, oh, well, it's because they had that. Like we start creating a narrative for ourselves about how this other person had it so much easier than us or like had a trust fund or, you know what I mean? So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because I have done the same exact thing. Here's what I was doing. I was actually a consultant for a network marketing company called Arbonne. And so I had been doing that for years and I really had developed a team, and I had a team in Australia, I had a team in England, and I had a team in the United States. And I had earned a Mercedes-Benz with the company. And that's, for people who see the film, you see that I actually had that car repossessed. And I was doing really well with that business. And so when I made this decision, I felt like it was really calculated because I felt like I have this money coming in every month. I kind of know the drill. Like I can do this and the movie at the same time. And what I realized was that I am absolutely not the type of person that can do that. And as soon as I kind of pulled my focus away from that business, things just kind of like went to hell in a handbasket. And so in a few years, my income whittled down to hardly anything. And I thought, my timing on things was just completely off. My sense of my own finances was just totally off. But then I was like totally in it. And I was like in love with this idea of being a filmmaker and making the film. And there was no way that I could focus on it as like weird and hard as that was. Like even my husband was like, there's no way you can focus on Arbonne right now. Like you've got to do this. You have to keep your 100% focus on this. And so that's what I did. And, I had my Mercedes repossessed. At one point we both had to sell our wedding bands to pay our rent one month. And things were really tight. And, and we made those decisions consciously because we realized that those are things. My professional life is so fulfilling. It doesn't feel like separate from my life. Like my life feels like my life. What I do feels like my life's work. So everything is kind of combined and collapsed and awesome. And so we both felt like, even though it was really hard to sell our wedding rings and the car, getting a car repo is not fun. But we have a lot of great stories. And he's looking at me smiling because we have a lot of great stories about that. But you know what? It's really humbling. It's really humbling to go from Mercedes, great loft. We had like a 3,400 square foot loft in downtown Denver. Man, we had stuff, things, trips. And then I was at I went to a place to buy and sell gold because we couldn't afford our rent. I think for me, it was such a big lesson in how serious am I in doing this? Like how much am I willing to put on the line? And it's humbling. It's like, you know what? Sometimes when you go for something big, like it feels like you're walking across glass on your knees, man. It hurts. And then it's like, wow, it's a really big gift also because humility and compassion and I'm crying right now. Those are two of my most favorite qualities in people. And you don't get that. You can't buy that. You can't just decide I'm going to be more compassionate or I'm going to be more humble. Like, I think life needs to humble you, and life needs to give you the gift of realizing how important compassion is to others. And then you get to be able to give that gift away to others. And so I look back at those things like great moments for me, although they were incredibly hard at the time.
Wow. I kind of want to cry too, but
you didn't know that, right, Betsy?
No, I didn't. So I think you kind of answered my question, but my question was going to be, did at any point you waver and think, I'm going to put this on the back burner and go back to my job or go back to consultancy because I'm putting too much on the line? Did it ever feel that way, or were you certain that this was the path?
No, I totally doubted it. I mean, and it's funny. My husband has been like my rock. Anytime I felt like, I would do so well. Like, I could totally, if I went back and did Arvon, I could just do so well. And I could, like the times where I've doubted and he's like, you would not. He's like, you wouldn't, because it's like, I am this and this is me. I don't consider this work what I do. It's who I am. And so there's no separation. I could do something else. Yeah. Like I've, done in the past a few things to make money, like outside the project. This is like about a year or two ago. But yeah, I just did that to make money. Do you know what I mean? But like, this is who I am. This is what I do. And I consider it part of the journey, like the ups, downs, and all arounds. But yeah, like self-doubt is like my best friend. Like, oh yeah, there it is again, and then I just have to look back and see like all the successes and believe like if that all happened, then more great things are going to happen. And counting my blessings is an incredible practice. And to really getting clear, like for the day, and like when I'm challenged by something or upset about something, like just getting clear about all the blessings is like the easiest way for me to get my head straight. But yeah, I don't think I'd be human. I think anyone that says that they don't have doubt is just lying. Sorry.
I agree. And I think one of the things I want to point out your husband, because I think that especially as women, and this hasn't come up, but you had two young daughters when you decided to make this change, right? And kind of pursue this new path. And I think so often it can feel like once women are in these roles of wife and mother, the part of us that had these dreams and these ambitions and aspirations, it can be really easy to put that on the back, because the pull of motherhood and being a wife, whatever we believe in our heads that role is supposed to mean, which is something I thought about a lot going into getting married last year. It's like, what does a wife, well, like when I think wife, like what do I think about? And one of the things I love is that your husband has been somebody who supported you, and and not just by saying he supports you, but by making sacrifices along with you and understanding how important this is to you fulfilling your purpose and mission. And also by, being with the girls when you have to travel, and you've been very candid on your social media, sharing sometimes about, I'm away from my girls and this travel and this work is amazing, but it takes me away. And that means that your husband steps in, which is something that I think should happen more often. But unfortunately, because it isn't something that we see in partnerships, even now, as far as we've come in terms of feminism and equality, although, maybe we haven't come that far based on what I've been seeing in politics. But I guess what I'm trying to say, and probably not saying very well, is I think Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook, said that the most important decision a woman makes that will determine the course of her life and her career and how she fulfills her purpose is her partner.
I could not agree more. First, I think just to your last point that you said about, it just being hard to be a mom. I think that gets amplified when you're Latina, because there's a whole set of expectations. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, my mom has stopped asking me, who's with the girls? Like, I'm like, hey mom, I'm in San Francisco, or hey mom, I'm in, wherever, Iowa, Texas, wherever. Who's with the girls? I'm like, Kevin's with the girls, mom. Like, when are you coming back? How are they doing? And like, I'm just like,
are they having dinner? Is he feeding them?
Yeah. And like, if I had a dime for everyone that was like, so like, wow, your husband's so cool. And I'm like, wow, like it should like we need to have higher standards,
Yeah.
you know, and because everybody should. And I will tell you, like before, I remember telling him, like right after we got married, and you know, in the year or two after we got married, I would say, wow, like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I feel like you don't really know what you're doing for a kid and a husband, or, you know, a spouse. Like you just have no idea. I didn't, of like what the level of commitment that looks like. Like it's almost like there's no way to fathom it until you're already committed, you know?
I agree. Yeah.
So, right. And so like, I just hit the lottery, and like, you know what, here's something else that's interesting. I've had you know, a lot of broken hearts. I think that like not enough people don't talk about falling on their face, walking across glass on their knees, having broken hearts, making mistakes. Just like, I think it's important to reveal the whole story and the whole truth. And like, also that, like, I have a willingness to learn and grow, and to like, see like, what can I improve? What wounds that I'm not taking responsibility for, can I take responsibility so I can attract someone who appreciates the woman that I am? And I had done a lot of work on myself, and I continue to, and that's what my husband was attracted to, and me to him as well.
Yeah. And I think the thing I've learned in my own relationships is that it's not like, I used to think, oh, if I'm with the right person, there isn't going to be any conflict.
Right.
When it's really, I think what is helpful and what makes a difference in some couples is that they both have a willingness to continue working on themselves. You know,
yes.
they're open to the idea that we're evolving. And I mean, I'm sure if we asked your husband, he would say, well, I had no idea Denise was going to want to pursue this project that was going to pull her all around the country. And it's like that willingness to continue to create that space for your partner to evolve and be supportive of that.
Mm-hmm,
I think that's something that we often don't talk about, that is, you know, a key component, particularly for women. And I think you hit a really important point that for Latina women, I think this idea of self-sacrifice and motherhood and being a wife, these things are very intertwined. And so we assign virtue to martyrdom in the sense of like, I give everything for my children, or my mother gave everything for me, and my mother sacrificed everything for me. And of course, that's very admirable. And especially for our immigrant mothers who had to work, you know, in my case, my mom had to work 2-3 jobs at the same time. And now I think for my generation, for the Enyes, like, how do we take the good elements of that, but also, and you and I have talked about this, but maybe take some of the more individualistic elements of American culture so that we can find a way to be mothers and be wives, but not at the expense of our own selves?
Yeah, I think honestly, that's the question of the hour. I think more people are grappling with that conversation, and it's like the self-care, self-love conversation. I feel it really intense now, and I just see a lot of people writing about it and talking about it and commenting about it. And I think it's important for Latinas to know that there are forces at work that we don't have an awareness of, that once we have an awareness of them, we actually can pick and choose like a la carte, like on the buffet line. And so, you know, you and I have talked a lot about this, and we definitely addressed it in the book, and that is the collective self-reliant. And so really quick, we as Latinas, we come from Enyes or immigrants, fifth generation, doesn't matter. We all come, and our roots are from countries that value the collective mindset. And so the collective mindset puts family first. It does not put individuals first. And so that's why when we make big decisions, we're like asking family members, buy a house, buy a car, everybody's weighing in, right? That's why when you like, right? And like let people weigh in. It's like, oh, excuse me, like they're offended, you know? And it's like everything from that to like walk into a room and have to kiss every single person hello, and then when you leave at a party, kiss everybody goodbye, like, and then like everything in between. So like we value the group, and there's a lot of gifts in that. And so like this whole thing about the virtuosity of motherhood and the self-sacrificing is definitely rooted in this collective ideology. And so it's valued, it's like appreciated. People are like, oh, she gave everything. Like sometimes my mom even says, oh, she's such a great mother. She sacrificed so much for her kids. And I'm like, she does all this stuff for them. And I'm like, wow, Mom, like
she's always there.
You know. Right.
I feel like that's my grandmother said the same thing about my sister who has 3 children. It's a stay-at-home mom. And she said, she's such a good mom. She's a better mom than I ever was, because I still had my grandmother had like several businesses that she ran throughout her life. And she's like, she's such a good mom, because she's always around. I had to get nannies and I wasn't always around. And I didn't have children at that point, but I thought, oh, that's really interesting that is how we define being a good mom. How can I follow you on? How can we follow you on social?
Yeah, so please follow us on social. I pretty much live on Instagram, and so Project Enye on Instagram, my personal account. I don't really do much there because it takes a lot of my energy to do the Project Enye one. So whenever I'm traveling, it's really fun. You get to see all the behind the scenes of my travel. We're almost at 20,000 followers, and so anyone that wants to like us, I would appreciate that so much. And we have a Facebook page. We are on Twitter. So pretty much everywhere you can find me and also the project, everything at Project Enye.
Don't forget, next week on the show, part 2 of my conversation with Denise Soler Cox. Have an amazing week. Remember, if you liked what you heard, leave me a review, the Currently podcast on iTunes, subscribe, leave me a 5-star rating, tell me what you loved about the episode, and you can also follow me on Instagram at Pt.1. Send me a DM, let me know what you loved about the show, send me an email. If you have any suggestions on other amazing podcasts or people who might want to sponsor the podcast who would be great, who have something amazing we should share with everybody, please let me know as well. All right, have a great week.